All right, welcome Cheryl to the Garifuna duo, the Garifuna way. This is our playlist on the Gahfu YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about 7 fish that Garifuna eat. Let's get started with barracuda.
Well, barracuda is one of those fishes that a lot of Garifuna people love to eat. And I'm just going to speak from my experience with my family. That was like the go-to fish. Barracuda was the go-to fish for hututu. That was like, whenever my mom made hudud or my dad made hudud, that was the number one fish that they wanted. And hudud, of course, is the green plantain, ripe plantain, pounding, and you could mix it with either coconut gravy, sere, lasus, or tikini, which is with the flour, browning up the flour and making, like a stew out of it. I like my hudud, the ratio of my hudud. I don't like it too sweet, so I always like my plantain, my hudud to be, 2 to 1. 2, ripe to 1 green. Sometimes I like a little bit more green than ripe, because sometimes when the ripe plantain is too sweet, then it's just kind of mess up the whole flavor for my hudud, just for me, because it makes it too sweet. But the barracuda, season that with a little bit of black pepper and salt, with a little bit of, garlic for flavoring and everything like that, it really makes it taste good. It really tops off the dish to me. So hudud and barracuda.
So the meat of barracuda, let me just add a little bit of information. It's considered tasty by some people, especially smaller varieties of barracuda. The texture can be firm with large flake and moderate fat content. Number 2, salmon.
Well, I love my salmon. That's like my go-to number one fish on a daily basis. I love my salmon, and I love my salmon especially when I'm making my seafood, my panadas. My panadas, those of you is familiar to like an empanada, it's like we call it around here like a fish taco. So we hash the fish, the salmon, and I usually add green and red bell pepper to it, a little bit of salt, black pepper, garlic. I season that all up, cook it. I make my panadas dough with masa, make that out, knead it out. I put my salmon stuffing in there, fry it, and we put some habanero sauce on top of that, and that's like how we make salmon panadas. I also like to make like salmon fish balls, but that's like another recipe. That's not really Garifuna, but the salmon panadas is something that I am known for, and I just absolutely love it.
So let me ask you about salmon. Is salmon also used for hudud?
I mean, it could be. All of the fish that we're going to talk about can be used for hudud. I don't typically like to, use salmon for hudud. That's not my go-to, but again, we're going to go through all these other fishes that I'll tell you when I use it for hudud and when I don't. But salmon is not one that I use for hudud. But I do use, salmon when I make bailap. Bailap is basically ground food. When I say ground food, it's, potato, yams, and yuca, cassava. Would also, sometimes I put plantain in there. So when I'm making like my boil up with the tomato sauce and everything like that, and the onion, I usually use salmon. I like that for my bailap, but I don't. And yeah, me and salmon and hudud, that's not my cup of tea. But I'm sure other people, like salmon in their hudud, their machuca.
Okay, let me add a little bit of information on salmon, that it is an excellent source of high quality protein, omega-3 fat acids, of course, and key vitamins and minerals such as B12, vitamin D, niacin, B3, selenium, phosphorus, and potassium. All right, so let's move on to number 3, 7 fish that Garifuna eat. Let's go with number 3, red snapper.
Well, red snapper is one of my all-time favorites. I love to use red snapper, of course, in hatutu, in machuca, but I really, really love to use red snapper in bundica. Bundica is, it's grated green banana, and seasoned with a little bit of black pepper and salt, and I like to put a little bit of garlic in there for flavor. And then you cook it in coconut milk, to make the cere la sauce. And then you add that red snapper in there. Oh my goodness, it's so delicious.
Yeah, red snapper is definitely a lean fish, high in protein with about 170 calories and 35 grams of protein per 6 ounce serving. So you know it is a great fish. I love it personally, so I get it a lot from the Filipino market where they clean it for me and it's ready to go. All right, 7 fish that Garifuna eat. Now we're in number 4, salt fish. And let me say that some of the following fish are made into saltfish: snook or robalo or codfish. So, saltfish.
Saltfish, the one that my mom used to always buy, especially around Easter time, was codfish, saltfish. And she would hatch that, and with a little bit of, pepper, salt, garlic, and onions, and she would make it with refried black beans and sometimes with Johnny cake, fried jack, or homemade tortillas. But my favorite was the hash, saltfish with some Johnny cake. That was like that was what I loved growing up. That I still love to make now these days. But yeah, saltfish, codfish, the bomb.
You know what, I have to say that saltfish is very hard to make because you have to desalt it. You have to leave it in water for what, 2 days?
Yeah, you have to get all that salt out. Sometimes it takes, it depends on how salty it is. Sometimes we'll take a day or two to like just soak that fish in there to get all the salt out, and then you're able to prepare the saltfish the way you want to. Also, my mom used to use, like robalo saltfish to make hudut. She used to love that. That was the way she would go look for it that way and make her hudut with that robalo.
Saltfish is very high in protein, which is it's higher than beef and chicken in protein. So it makes an excellent food for muscle growth and energy. All right, let's go to number 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 5 will be kingfish.
Well, kingfish, that was my dad's. My dad loved his kingfish, and he was the only one in the family, aside from my older sister, who used to love tapado. Tapado is like
Tapo.
yeah, tapado. It's basically green banana chopped up and cooked in coconut milk. So again, that was one of my dad's favorite fish, and only he and my sister, used to like tapado. I'm not a tapo eater. I'm a bundiga eater. If you say what's the one Garifuna food that you could eat every day, I can eat bundiga every single day, 7 days a week. That's just my all-time favorite Garifuna food.
Now, this fish contains omega-3 fatty acids, EPA, and DHA, which reduces inflammation, lower bad cholesterol, and of course, supports heart health and brain function. So, you got to get your kingfish. All right, let's go with number 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 5 would be actually 6, grouper.
Grouper, it's a fish that a lot of, my people like. A lot of Garifuna people like grouper. I don't really, like it, but, it's something that I know my parents both love to eat. So I'm just going to leave it at that because, like I said, it's a fish that's very popular in our Garifuna community, but it's not one of my favorite.
Well, this fish is good because it supports immune function, bone health, metabolism, nervous system health, and antioxidant defense. So get your grouper on. All right, let's go with the last one. That would be jack.
So jackfish, that was one of my maternal grandmother's favorite fish. And I remember she used to love to use jackfish fried. When she would use the jackfish, she would make, I'm probably saying the name wrong. I don't know how to say it in Garifuna, but I think in Spanish it's frita. The frita is the smashed green banana.
Oh, frita.
Yeah, frita, yeah. But it would be smashed green banana and then season it with a little bit of salt and black pepper and fry it. And yeah, that with some some fried jack, that not fried jack, but fried jackfish, that's like so good. And that was one of my grandmother's favorite meal. My favorite meal with jackfish is the rasa. The rasa is green banana that you basically grate and then you make it like a tamale. Of course, you add salt, season it with salt and pepper and whatever else you want to put it. Sometimes you could put a little bit of habanero in there to give it a little heat. And then you wrap it in banana leaf or you wrap it in foil and then you boil it. And, you know, after it's done, I like to cut up some onions on top of that with some fried jackfish. Oh my goodness, that is like, again, amazing.
Well, they say the jackfish is good for digestive benefits. It is easily digestible and suitable for those with digestive issues or seeking a light protein source. So get your jackfish. Delicious. Now, we already have the 7 fish, right, that Garifuna people eat. Do you wanted to add something else?
Yes, well, you know, pretty much all of these fish that we mentioned, you know, everybody prepares it different ways. You know, sometimes it's fried, sometimes it's boiled, you know, but these are, you know, like the common fish that are typical in the Garifuna household. And I'm sure there's more that we probably did not mention. But again, these are the fishes that go good with, you know, all of the staple Garifuna dishes like hututu, you know, with the tapado, with the panares, and, you know, the bundiga. These are like the fishes that will be commonly used.
All right. What about tilapia and catfish? What's wrong with those?
Oh, well, you know what? Okay, well, growing up, we did not eat tilapia or catfish. You know, they were considered bottom feeders. So all I recall about, you know, tilapia and those bottom feeders was when I was a little girl growing up in my grandmother's village, and when we had to take out the chamber pot. You know, the chamber pot is what what we used to use back in the village to pee and do our number 2 in. And what I remember when we would go and empty the chamber pot out with my grandmother, you would just see like the tilapia jumping up and catching whatever was inside the chamber pot. So, you know.
And the catfish.
You know, and the catfish. So those are the things that I remember about tilapia and catfish. So that's why I don't eat it. I know it's a popular fish here in the United States and they're farmed and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? I just have flashback and just seeing them jumping up and you know, going for the chamber pot. So yeah, I personally do not eat tilapia and I don't eat catfish.
You know what? In general, I think that Garifuna people do not eat tilapia or catfish. I've seen Americans eat it a lot and a lot of the Latinos eat it a lot. But tilapia, basically, the concerns are over farming practices. Much of the tilapia is consumed, especially imported from China, and is farm raised under crowded and sometimes unsanitary conditions. That's one of the things that they report, right? And then the catfish is probably similar. It has some potential dangers and health risks to be aware of, like omega-6 fatty acids and inflammation. Catfish contains omega-6 fatty acids, which, when consumed in excess, can promote inflammation. And it's heavy on mercury and heavy metal contamination as well. So please, if you have a choice, do not eat tilapia or catfish. And this is from the Garifuna standpoint, right?
I mean, you know what? Folks are going to eat what they want to eat. It's not my, you know, it's not, I wouldn't eat it. I don't eat it. You know, I don't, yeah, no. You know, so, but to each his own. If you like tilapia, if you like your catfish, you know, hey, go for it. But yeah, typically it is true that Garifuna people typically do not eat tilapia and catfish. But hey, again, we went through the 7 fishes that Garifuna people traditionally eat. That's barracuda, salmon, red snapper, saltfish, kingfish, grouper, jack, and then the 2 that we do not eat, tilapia and catfish.
All right. So for those of you who enjoy this podcast or this video, please like it. And also, if you have any suggestions, I want you to leave a comment under this video. We need to know what are some of the topics that you would like us to discuss. And we will make sure that Cheryl and I do our research and create a video. Thank you for listening.
Bye. Bye-bye.